it's really amazing to see all these really great designs, product development, and I'm very happy to be invited to this event. So thank you very much again. I think this is not the first slide of my presentation. It's somewhere halfway through my presentation, this slide. So I will just start to introduce my studio. If you can maybe look for the first page of my presentation. I will start with this small introduction of my studio. My studio is called Superimpose Architecture. And we're based in Rotterdam and in Beijing. And actually we're founded about 6 years ago after having worked in China for about 5 years. And I founded the company together with my two partners. There we go. Right. So the title of my presentation will be Super Strategies, and why I call this Super Strategies, the name of my company is Superimpose Architecture, is because every project we do, we always look very carefully at what the strategy should be for a project. So the design outcome, of course, is very nice to look at, and it's very nice to publish in a magazine or publish online. What's actually more important for us is what makes the project powerful. You know, how do we get to the end result? And very often it has to do with different kind of factors. Sometimes it has to do with the client, with the site, with the community, or trying to be sustainable. So there's different factors are basically influencing the way we design. So I run the studios together with my two partners, Ruben and Carolyn. And the meaning of our name is actually quite important, superimpose, to place one thing on top of another in such a way that it's an addition. And that both layers are still evident. And that's something we do with our architecture, for instance, this project, which I'm going to show later. But it also has to do with the way we see architecture as an overlaying of community, connectivity, functionality, sustainability, contextuality, but also at the same time profitability, because we're also working with clients together. And then this name also reflects our team structure. So we select our team members based on diversity rather than similarity. So this is a small introduction of our studio. We've been working on a few larger projects like Sky City in Guangzhou is almost finished. The Well Living Lab, which is the first laboratory which basically tests with biometric sensors how we can improve indoor living and indoor working. We also do community centers, master plan projects, and interior design. But I'm not going to discuss these projects today. I will discuss maybe the most meaningful projects we've been working on until now. This I just explained, the super strategies, that's a very important part of our work, and I will explain how we applied these super strategies in our projects. So this is a very small, you've just seen a 70,000 square meter project, a 1 million square meter project, but this actually is one of my favorite projects. It's a very small pavilion in a courtyard we designed for the Beijing Design Week. And the client, which is a multimedia projection artist, they approached us in order to ask, can you design a pavilion for the Beijing Design Week for us? And we said, yes, we want to do it, but only if we can also portray a message, if we can say something with the pavilion, if we can really use it in order to do something interesting. So the brief was to design the installation, make projection possible in the installation, create the space for live art performances, and the budget was not very high. So this is the starting situation of Beijing, and this is actually a courtyard that you'll find more often in Beijing. And Beijing is, as you might know, anyway, a courtyard city with the hutongs that we have in Beijing. This is a larger scale courtyard, but actually is being used as a parking lot. So there's no sense of belonging in this space. So we analyzed this space and said, okay, how can we make this a more interesting space? And then there's two trees that are basically kind of lost inside this courtyard space. And we said, why not we make these trees the center point of the design? So we want to frame them and highlight the nature, the very small amount of nature inside this courtyard. And by doing this, we actually overlay a pavilion right over these trees and make these trees the center point of the design, and it becomes kind of like a Zen courtyard inside this. It's a courtyard in a courtyard. So we play with the scale of the courtyard, and we also play with the feeling of density and space. So actually, within this space, you might be in a very small, confined space, but actually, because it's so zen, it might feel more spacious. So space is not always related to the size of the space, it's also related to what's happening inside the space and how it's materialized and what kind of activities find place. So this is the pavilion we designed, and actually I had a very nice video, but we can't play it. It's showing how the projections are working together with the pavilion, because we're working with the multimedia artist. But it's quite important to see that actually if you enter the pavilion there through the main entrance, you first walk through a corridor before you enter into the main courtyard space. So this is the corridor, and at night this starts to illuminate and be really an attractive pavilion. This is how we captured the trees. And this is like, it kind of becomes a transition zone. And then inside the courtyard there's a different vibe. And at night we have a smoke machine, and it really becomes like this mystical space within this courtyard. So why we integrated a smoke machine is also to re-establish the notion of pollution inside this pavilion. And it's something, it's a message that we always try to look for in the projects that we do. How can we also play with awareness? How can we play with the notion of scale? And that's very important that we did in project. And actually also, if you look at this, the materialization we use for the screen really makes this fog effect more clear. Okay, the second project I'm going to present, super strategy number 2, is Micro, which is a very small kids camp in the valleys of Hangzhou. And what's so interesting about this camp, this is the brief very quickly, designed a summer camp for kids from Hangzhou and Shanghai. Should be 6 individual tents, scatter them through the valley. Each tent hosts 10 kids, and the architect to decide on the final location. So this is our client, and the client is basically encouraging the farmers to produce organic, or to work with organic farming, which is quite a difficult thing to do, because it really changes how people are working in the valley. So our client initiated this, and he's also looking into how to attract people to the countryside, which is a very important thing as well, because of the urbanization that we have in China. It's also important to look at how can we bring people back to the countryside, and he's doing this by placing architectural elements in the valley, producing organic produce, and then selling the memberships to people that live in the city for organic products. So this is in Hangzhou. It's very close to. It's about 82 kilometers from Hangzhou. I will just skip the more complicated part, but this is our small building. So it's part of a bigger master plan for the site. So we did some site scouting, and then we said, okay, we want to do this project because we think we can actually, as architects, we can also help in getting elevate the value of the countryside. So we see our responsibility there. So what we did actually is the 6 tents that the client was asking for, we combined them together in one circular shape, to also provide an additional space to this valley, a space for the community to interact, a space for the community to gather. So this ring, basically by organizing the tents in this circle, it also becomes a platform to educate about organic farming, and also for the kids in the camp. So this is our small pavilion. The patio really becomes an important part, and then this is how we organize the 6 different tents in this valley. And then this is the final result in a drone view, and this is the structure that we use. It's reclaimed, also built from reclaimed wood, so we didn't use any new materials, and the canvas can be reused. And this is how we built it, because we didn't have construction site workers working on the project, but we had the local farmers working on the project. So we had to go to the site to explain them how to build it with hands and with very simple models. So it's a very different way of looking at projects if you compare it to larger commercial projects. This is way more authentic in a way. So this is how we built the structure. It's very repetitive, so it's not very complicated. And by not making it very complicated, it can be also very impactful at the same time. So, and then as you can see, basically from the outside, it looks like an elevated ring. So the entire bottom layer relates to the landscape. So it tried to mimic the materialization of the landscape, but at the same time we're providing this new thing, like a ring of progress into this valley as well, and a recognizable point. So the kids in the valley started calling this the White House, because it has a very clear identity. Yes, I think The third project I will present is actually two projects in one, and this is called The Reveal. It's a factory renovation. Actually, the client owns a lot of land in this city called Guangzhou. He owns a lot of land, and he asked us to design a mixed-use development for a site. And the site happened to have these very nice factories dating from the 1940s. So this is the city we're talking about, Guangzhou. And also Guangzhou has been facing relocation, urbanization. So it's under a lot of pressure, and very often the places where these people used to live, they get demolished very easily. Social structures are being demolished or completely disappear. So we were looking into how can we plan this 1 million square meters in such a way that we don't do this, ignore and erase, maximize floor area, and extrude, what's happening very often as well. So we had to come with a counter proposal for this client. So we did our field research, tried to find out how we could improve the situation. So this is actually the plan with the factories. So there's 15 factories in total, and this is what the government planning did for us. So they basically cut the roads right through the factories, completely ignoring the urban fabric. So this is what happened. They just cut through the factories, and now there's a 6-lane road there. And actually, these factories were also about to be demolished. So we came to the site, and we asked the client what to do with these factories, and he said, "Don't you worry about them. They're going to be demolished." So as he was doing us a favor. But actually, we said, "No, we don't want to do this. We don't want to demolish this because they can be very important." And we also question if this model always applied to every city, especially if you own so much land. Can we not use this development in order to create extra value for the other plots of lands that he also owns? So here you can see that we managed to convince him, and we have different kind of functions. We have an exhibition hall, library, farmers market, and by making this development quite valuable, also the value of the surrounding developments is being elevated. So this is how we managed to convince the client, also because we can try to convince him from architectural principles, but very often that's not really easy to apply to a client who just also thinks about how to make profit. So we need to think together with the client how we can make this sustainable. So and then the second phase we also developed. I will show you some images later of this phase. And this is how we developed the full master plan. So phase 1 we kept the factories. Phase 2 we were building the residential towers. So actually these factories completely about to be demolished. We kept them. We transformed them into an exhibition center. We brought human scale back to the factory so it could also be used, and it felt a bit more comfortable as an exhibition center. And actually, the government liked it so much that they decided to move in. So this is the desk moving in because they liked the space so much. We kept the original artifacts. We didn't do much to the factory. We left it as it was as much as possible. Also for the facade, the only thing we did is we took out the window frames because they're not very sustainable as well. We took them out, we placed new cassettes on top of them, and we actually left the structure. If you see behind the frame, you can still see the structure of the building. So there's minimum intervention, maximum result. So, and then the plot next door, we also developed with the same client as a different type of housing, what you usually see in these type of cities as well. So what's very typical is that these housing blocks, they become gated communities, something we wanted to prevent for this project as well. North-south orientation isn't really necessary always, per se. So we wanted to deviate from this type of scheme and develop Y-Loft City. And the name says we designed this for the Y generation, for young people that could basically have small residential units that they could configure the way they want to have it configured. And here you can see that we actually open up the plan towards all directions and place these 3 towers on the site. So this is during the construction stage. Here you can see that actually what we have created is a very simple block module, and every buyer can just do whatever they want to have with this unit. And here you can see that we added valuable outside space as well. We managed to talk with the client how we can prevent that these will eventually be taken as interior space. And here you can see what it does with the context as well. We call it beacons of progress. That's also how it's been published quite often. But we like these photos because they also show what's happening to this city, and that this city is also very forward-thinking. You see some of the towers in the old urban fabric. And we think that adding these spaces will actually elevate the quality of life in the city for the Y generation. Okay, that was my presentation. Thank you very much.